Chapter 8. It is not uncommon when a resolution has at last been formed for the difficulty of acting upon it to present itself with greater force than that of arriving at it. For though the mind may be satisfied, the manner of proceeding is not always so easily determined. Miss Vesta, however, was not inclined to indulge such hesitation. That she had been mistaken she no longer doubted. That the error required correction was equally clear. What remained was only the act itself. She quitted her room with a degree of composure which, though not entirely unaffected by the urgency of her purpose, was sufficient to prevent her from appearing disordered, though not perhaps from being so in fact. That she had not yet taken the precaution of securing the outer garments, which propriety might have recommended, was a circumstance she did not immediately consider. It was therefore with no small degree of impatience that she found her progress interrupted. "A moment," said Astarion. She stopped, not willingly, but not without control. "I have very few of those to spare," she replied. "I shall not require many." There was, in his manner, a change which, though slight, was not imperceptible. The ease which had first recommended him, and the careful ambiguity which had later sustained his influence, were now tempered by something more deliberate. "I owe you," he said, "an apology." Vesta regarded him steadily. "For what?" "For allowing you," he replied, "to form an opinion which did not entirely serve you. That is a generous construction of the matter. I have been generous before." "Yes," she said, "that is precisely the difficulty." Astarion's expression altered, only slightly, but enough to be observed. "I did not intend—" "No," Vesta returned, with a composure that did not exclude firmness. "You intended very precisely." There was a pause. "I misjudged you," he said. "No," she replied. "You understood me very well." "And you think me unforgivable?" "I think you deliberate." "That is not a crime." "No," Vesta said, "but it is not a quality I admire." He studied her. "And yet you did." "I was mistaken. There are statements which admit of no reply, and this was one." At that same moment, Mr. Dekarios, whose own reflections had not been entirely free from agitation, found himself compelled, though not without reluctance, to seek that conversation which he had hitherto avoided. That he did so was not the result of confidence, but of necessity. There are, after all, occasions upon which inaction becomes indistinguishable from surrender, and this, he believed, was one of them. He had not expected to find her immediately, nor perhaps had he expected to find her so engaged. He saw her before she saw him. She stood with Astarion, composed, attentive, and not unwilling to remain. Gale stopped. There are few errors of judgment more swiftly made than those which are formed at a distance, and though he might, upon another occasion, have allowed for explanation, he was not, at present, inclined to do so. It would not, he thought, be altered. He turned. Vesta saw him then. Not at once, but soon enough that his withdrawal could not be mistaken for accident. "Mr. Dekarios." He did not stop. There are refusals which require no words, and this was one of them. "A moment," said Astarion, but she did not remain. There are, in every system of propriety, allowances which may be made for urgency, though such allowances are seldom granted without consequence. Miss Vesta, who had not paused to consider either the one or the other, followed him. That she had not taken the time to secure her cloak, nor to attend to those smaller adjustments of dress which society would have deemed necessary, was a circumstance which, under ordinary conditions, would not have escaped her attention. It did not now occur to her at all. The cold met her immediately, but she was not sensible of it. "Mr. Dekarios!" He stopped. Not at once, but sufficiently to suggest that he had heard, and had chosen, after some consideration, not to proceed. When he turned, his expression was composed. too composed. "You should not be here," he said. "I should. You are without—" He hesitated, as though the remainder required no specification. "What you require?" "I require only a moment." "That," he replied with a restraint which did not entirely conceal the effort it cost him, "is precisely what I would not presume to take." "You must," she said. "There are moments in which propriety yields, not to impulse, but to necessity." This was one. There are moments in which intention, however firmly held, is undone at once by the simplest expression of another's regard. Miss Vesta had prepared herself to speak. She had not prepared herself to be met with kindness. Mr. Dekarios had scarcely turned fully toward her when, without hesitation, he removed his coat and placed it about her shoulders. The action was immediate, unconsidered, and therefore, perhaps more revealing than any declaration might have been. "You should not remain here," he said, though not with severity. "It is colder than you suppose." Vesta did not at first reply. There are gestures which, though slight in themselves, carry with them a weight disproportionate to their form. And this was one of them. She had expected restraint, distance, perhaps even dismissal. She had not expected care, and in that moment the composure upon which she had relied failed her entirely. "I do not deserve this." The words escaped her before she had determined to speak them. Gale stilled. "That is not—" "I have been wrong," she continued, with a steadiness that was not the product of calm, but of necessity. "Not only in what I believed, but in what I chose to believe." He did not interrupt her again. "I thought myself justified," she said. "I thought myself discerning. I believed that because something was easily understood, it must therefore be true, and that what required effort was to be mistrusted." She drew a breath. "I see now that I preferred what was simple, what was agreeable, what required nothing of me." The words, once begun, did not easily stop. "And in doing so I misjudged you," she said. "I required of you a clarity I did not require of another. I dismissed your restraint as evasion, and your caution as indifference." Gale's expression altered, though whether in surprise or something more difficult to name, it was not immediately clear. "I do not ask," she continued, "that you excuse it, only that you understand it, as I now do." He remained silent. "I have been unfair," she said, "and more than that, I have been unjust." There was a pause. The air, though still sharp, seemed less so now, not because it had changed, but because neither was entirely aware of it. "I do not deserve your regard," she said more quietly, "nor your patience, and yet I find that I cannot bear the thought that I have lost it." Gale's composure, though still present, was no longer untouched. "You have not—" he began, but she did not allow him to finish. "I have tried," she said with a faint, unsteady breath, "to dismiss what I felt, to persuade myself that I was correct in doing so, that it was better, more reasonable, to believe what was easily explained." Her voice softened. It was not. There was no longer any distance in it. "I do not wish you to go," she said. The simplicity of the statement rendered it, if anything, more affecting. "And I do not know," she added, "whether I have forfeited any right to say so." She met his gaze fully now. "But if I have not, if there remains even the smallest possibility that I have not entirely undone what might have been—" She faltered, though only slightly. "Then I must ask it." The moment once arrived at, admitted of no retreat. Is it too late? There are few questions more difficult to answer than those which one has scarcely allowed oneself to hope might be asked. Mr. Dekarios did not immediately reply. That he did not do so was not the result of uncertainty, but of the necessity of reconciling what he had heard with what he had believed to be no longer possible. You cannot suppose, he said at last, though with less steadiness than he might have wished, that I am indifferent. I do not suppose it, she said quickly. I fear it. You should not. There was in his tone a firmness which had not been present before. I had thought, he continued more carefully now, that my regard, however imperfectly expressed, had been sufficiently unwelcome as to require no further declaration. It was not unwelcome, she said. It was misunderstood. And now? Now, she said, I understand it better than I did. And what do you understand? That you were careful, she replied, where I was careless. That you were honest, she continued, where I preferred what was easy. That you were, she hesitated, though not from doubt, kind. The word simply spoken did not diminish in its effect. Gale regarded her. And you believe, he said, that this understanding comes too late. I fear it does. It does not. The answer, though quiet, was without hesitation. Vesta's breath caught. You are certain? I am, he said, though I confess I had not expected to be so fortunate as to be asked to prove it. There was, in this, something very near to warmth. And you, he added, with a degree of seriousness that did not entirely exclude hope, are you equally certain? Vesta did not hesitate. I am. There are perhaps moments in which words, having fulfilled their purpose, are no longer sufficient to contain what remains. What followed was not immediate, nor entirely deliberate. Gale, who had thus far maintained a degree of composure which did him considerable credit, appeared, for once, uncertain how best to proceed. Vesta did not assist him. She remained where she was, as though the question, having at last been answered, had left her unwilling to disturb the certainty of it. It was, therefore, with a hesitation more revealing than any confidence might have been, that he reached for her. The movement was slight, easily withdrawn, yet not withdrawn. She did not resist. If there was any doubt remaining, it was not expressed. The distance between them, which had so long been preserved, was not, at last, maintained. What passed between them required no explanation, nor indeed did it admit of one.